What's up, everybody? Today's story is about a guy whose mother passes away and leaves behind what he thought was a fair will. Everything split 50-50 between him and his sister. But at the reading, his sister produces a different will. One that gives her the house, the car, and 80% of the savings. Our guy gets sentimental items, a box of photo albums and his mom's old recipe book. Something felt wrong, real wrong. So he hired a probate attorney who pulled the original documents. Turns out the new will was drafted 3 months before mom died, when mom had dementia and sister had power of attorney. The original will split everything equally. What happened next involves a contested probate, potential elder abuse charges, and a family that will never be the same. This is heavy. Let's get into it. My sister produced a revised will after mom died that gave her everything. My attorney found the original. It split everything 50-50. The revised will was signed when mom had dementia. I need to talk about this because I've been carrying it for almost a year, and it's eating me alive. My family is destroyed. My relationship with my sister might never recover. And the person at the center of it all, my mom, isn't here to explain any of it. So I'm left with paperwork, attorneys, and a lifetime of questions I'll never get answers to. My name's Connor. I'm 36. I work as a financial analyst for a regional accounting firm. Numbers, reports, projections, that kind of thing. It's the kind of job where attention to detail isn't just valued, it's mandatory. You miss a decimal point and someone's tax return is off by $10,000. That training, the habit of reading every line, every number, every clause, is what eventually made me realize something was wrong with my mother's will. My mom, Helen, passed away 14 months ago. She was 71. It was cancer. Diagnosed late, moved fast. From diagnosis to the end was about 4 months. Those 4 months were the hardest of my life. Watching someone you love, the person who raised you, who taught you to ride a bike, who called you every Sunday just to check in. Watching that person disappear piece by piece. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, not even my sister. And I have reasons to wish things on my sister. My sister Leah is 33, 3 years younger than me. Growing up, we were close. Not best friends close, but sibling close. We fought, we made up, we had each other's backs when it counted. She was always the more outgoing one, more social, more charming, better at getting what she wanted from people, including our parents. I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who showed up, did the work, and didn't complain. If that sounds like golden child dynamics, it probably was. But I'd made my peace with it. Or so I thought. When mom got sick, the family dynamic shifted. Dad had passed 5 years earlier, heart attack, sudden, no warning. So it was just me, Leah, and mom. I lived about 40 minutes from mom's house. Leah lived 10 minutes away. Because of proximity, Leah became the primary caregiver. She handled doctor's appointments, medication schedules, and the day-to-day reality of keeping mom comfortable as things progressed. I helped on weekends and evenings when I could, but my work schedule and the commute made it harder for me to be there daily. I'm not making excuses. That's just the reality. Leah was there more, and I was grateful for that. At the time, about 2 months before mom passed, her cognitive state declined significantly. The cancer had affected her brain, not directly, but the medications, the exhaustion, the overall deterioration took a toll. She'd forget what day it was. She'd confuse me with my dad sometimes. She'd start sentences and trail off. The doctors used words like cognitive impairment and diminished capacity. They recommended she have someone manage her affairs. Leah already had power of attorney. Mom had designated her about a year earlier, when she first got sick. It made sense at the time because Leah was local and available. I didn't object. I need to emphasize, I did not object to Leah having power of attorney. I trusted my sister. That trust is what makes everything that happened next so much worse. Hold on, this is me jumping in, not Connor. I want to set something up for the listeners. We have 2 siblings. One is local, present, and has power of attorney. The other is 40 minutes away, working full-time, showing up when he can. One has legal authority over their dying mother's affairs. The other has trust. Trust is about to get destroyed. Power of attorney is about to get weaponized. And the person who can't defend herself, mom, is going to be at the center of a legal fight she never would have wanted. I'm calling Leah the executor because that's what she thinks she is. But what she actually did? That's not executing a will. That's manufacturing one. I want to give you a sense of what those last months were like because I think it's important context. In December, 3 months before she passed, I visited Mom on a Saturday. She was sitting in her recliner watching a cooking show. She looked up when I walked in and said, "Oh, David, did you bring the casserole?" David was my father's name. He'd been dead for 5 years. She thought I was him. That lasted about 30 seconds before she corrected herself and said, "Sorry, honey, I knew it was you. She trailed off. She couldn't finish the sentence. I made her a cup of decaf and we sat together, watching the cooking show in silence. She fell asleep after about 20 minutes. I covered her with the blanket from the back of the chair and went to the kitchen to wash the dishes that had piled up in the sink. Leah had been there earlier that day, but hadn't done the dishes. I did them because that's what you do. You show up and you do the dishes. In January, the month the new will was signed, Mom had a particularly bad week. She called me on a Wednesday evening and asked me to come over because she couldn't find the remote control. I drove 40 minutes. The remote was on the coffee table. She'd been looking at it the whole time. She just couldn't connect the object to the function. I stayed for an hour, made sure she ate something, and drove home. That was January 12th, 3 days before the new will was signed. 3 days before someone decided this woman was capable of rewriting her estate plan. Mom passed on a Tuesday morning in March. Leah was with her. I got the call at work. I drove straight to the house. By the time I arrived, the hospice team had already been there and gone. Mom was at peace. The house was quiet. Leah and I sat in the living room and cried together. Whatever was coming, and I didn't know yet what was coming, that moment was real. I believe that. I have to believe that. I stayed at the house for about an hour after Leah left. I walked through the rooms. The kitchen where Mom used to make banana bread on Sunday mornings. The living room where she watched her cooking shows. The bedroom where the hospice bed now sat, empty and neatly made. I opened the closet and her clothes were still there, organized by color the way she always kept them. Blouses on the left, sweaters in the middle, jackets on the right. She was so organized. Even dying couldn't change that about her. I took a sweater, a blue cardigan she used to wear every fall, and put it in my car. I don't know why. I just needed something of hers that wasn't in a will, something nobody could contest. The funeral was 4 days later. Simple. Beautiful. Mom had planned some of it herself, back when she was still lucid, picked the readings, the flowers, even the order of the service. She was always organized. I get that from her. The turnout was bigger than I expected, about 80 people. Mom had touched a lot of lives. Neighbors, former colleagues from the school where she taught for 28 years, friends from her book club that she'd been in since I was a kid. They all came. Her book club friends sat together in the third row, all of them holding the same edition of the book they'd been reading that month. It was the kind of funeral where the eulogies weren't performances. They were just people telling the truth about someone they loved. The will reading was scheduled for 2 weeks after the funeral. Mom's attorney, a guy named Harold Benton, who'd handled my parents' estate planning for years, set it up at his office. Me, Leah, and Harold, in a conference room with wood paneling and bad lighting. Standard stuff. Harold started by making small talk. He'd known my parents for over 20 years. He mentioned that Mom had been a wonderful client, and that he was sorry for our loss. Standard attorney stuff, delivered with what seemed like genuine feeling. Harold's not a bad guy. I want to be clear about that. What happened wasn't his fault. He read the most recent will on file. That's his job. And immediately, something felt off. The will he read gave Leah the house, the car, and 80% of the liquid assets, savings accounts, CDs, a small investment portfolio that totaled about $170,000. Leah got $136,000. I got $34,000. Plus, personal items of sentimental value, which translated to Mom's recipe book, some photo albums, and a jewelry box with costume pieces. Not the good jewelry. Leah got that too. I looked at Harold. I said, "That doesn't sound right." Harold said, "This is the most recent version of the will on file, executed on January 15th. January 15th, Mom died in March. January 15th was less than 3 months before she died. January 15th was deep into her cognitive decline. January 15th was a date when, according to her medical records, she was having trouble remembering her own phone number. I looked at Leah. She was looking at the table. Not at me, not at Harold, at the table. And her face was blank. Not surprised. Not emotional. Blank. Like she already knew what was in the will. Like she'd already read it. Because she had. Because she wrote it. Or at least, she had it written. Pause. I need everyone to process this. The original will, the one Mom wrote when she was healthy and lucid, split everything equally. 50-50. Fair. Reasonable. Done. But 3 months before she died, when she couldn't remember her phone number, a new will appears that gives Leah everything. The house, the car, 80% of the money. And Connor gets recipe books. Recipe books. And the execution date falls during a period of documented cognitive decline, when Leah, and only Leah, had power of attorney and daily access to Mom. The executor didn't just execute the will, she rewrote it, while Mom was too sick to know what she was signing. If this isn't what elder exploitation looks like, I don't know what is. Connor's financial analyst brain is about to kick into gear, and when a numbers guy starts pulling threads, the whole sweater unravels. I didn't say anything else at Harold's office. I thanked him, took my copy of the will, and drove home. I sat at my kitchen table with the document in front of me and read it 4 times. Every line, every clause, every signature. Mom's signature on the last page was shaky, not the clean, confident handwriting I'd seen on 35 years of birthday cards and permission slips. This was the handwriting of someone whose hand wasn't steady, someone who might not have known what she was signing. The next morning, I called a probate attorney, a woman named Catherine Walsh, who specializes in contested wills and elder estate disputes. I found her through a colleague at work who dealt with a similar situation with his grandmother. Catherine agreed to review the case. I sent her everything: the will from Harold's office, my parents' previous estate documents, which I had copies of because Mom had given me a folder of important papers years ago, Mom's medical records from the last 6 months, and a timeline of Leah's access and authority during Mom's decline. Catherine called me back 3 days later. She said, "Connor, I've reviewed everything, and I have significant concerns about this will." She walked me through her findings. First, the original will, executed in 2019 when both my parents were alive, split all assets equally between me and Leah. 50-50. No conditions. No preferences. Equal. Second, the revised will, the one Harold read, was executed on January 15th of this year. It was drafted by a different attorney, not Harold, a solo practitioner named David Klein, who Leah had apparently found on her own. David Klein had no prior relationship with our family. He'd never met my mother before. He drafted the new will based on instructions from the client and her designated representative. The designated representative was Leah. Third, and this is the part that made Catherine's voice change, the January will was signed during a period when Mom's medical records documented significant cognitive decline, impaired decision-making capacity, and intermittent confusion regarding personal affairs. Her oncologist had written a note in December, 1 month before the new will was signed, recommending that all major legal and financial decisions be deferred until the patient's cognitive status can be properly assessed. That assessment never happened. Instead, a new will appeared. Catherine said, "Connor, this will was almost certainly executed while your mother lacked mental capacity to sign legal documents. Combined with the fact that Leah had power of attorney, daily access, and chose a new attorney with no family relationship. This has the hallmarks of undue influence." I asked her what that meant in practical terms. She explained it the way you'd explain it to a financial analyst, which I appreciated, because legal jargon is its own language, and I was still processing everything emotionally. She said undue influence is when someone in a position of trust or authority over a vulnerable person uses that position to manipulate the person's decisions for their own benefit. The key elements: a vulnerable person, Mom, documented cognitive decline, a trusted person with access and authority, Leah, POA holder, primary caregiver, a change in wishes that benefits the trusted person, new will giving Leah 80%, and circumstances suggesting the change wasn't freely made. New attorney, no independent capacity check, Leah present during signing. She said, each of those elements exists in your case, all four. That's unusual. Most cases have 2 or 3 and we still prevail. Undue influence. That's the legal term for when someone uses their position of power over a vulnerable person to manipulate that person's decisions. It's a form of elder exploitation. And it's exactly what happened to my mother. Wait. Let me break this down, because the details matter. The executor found a new attorney, one who had never met Mom, to draft a new will during a period when Mom's own doctor said she shouldn't be making major decisions. She used her power of attorney to make it happen. She brought a confused, declining 71-year-old woman to a stranger's office and had her sign a document that transferred 80% of her assets to Leah, while Connor, the other beneficiary, the son who was supposed to get his fair share, was at work, 40 minutes away, trusting his sister. This isn't a family dispute. This is financial elder abuse with a power of attorney as the weapon. The oncologist literally wrote, "Defer all major decisions." They didn't defer. They made the biggest decision of their mother's estate. And they did it with a stranger's pen. I filed the will contest in April. Catherine handled the paperwork. The grounds were threefold: lack of mental capacity to sign legal documents, Mom wasn't cognitively capable of understanding what she was signing, undue influence. Leah used her position as caregiver and POA holder to direct the creation of a new will, and procedural irregularity. The new will was drafted by an attorney with no prior relationship to the family, based on instructions from someone other than the testator. I called my buddy Jake before I filed. I needed to talk it through with someone who wasn't an attorney. Jake's been my friend since college. He's an accountant, quiet guy, doesn't say much, but when he does, it's usually worth hearing. I told him everything. The will, the dates, the medical records, the attorney Leah found. He listened for about 20 minutes without interrupting. Then he said, "Connor, if you don't contest this, you're telling your mother that her original wishes don't matter." And they do. She wrote them down. In 2019, when she was herself. That settled it. Leah was served with the contest papers at her house. She called me within the hour. Not crying, not apologetic. Angry. She said, "How could you do this to me? After everything I did for Mom?" I said, "Leah, I'm contesting the will because it was signed when Mom couldn't think straight. You know that." She said, "Mom wanted me to have the house. She told me." I said, "Then why did her original will split everything equally?" She didn't have an answer for that. She pivoted. She said, "I was the one who was there, Connor. Every day, every appointment, every bad night. Where were you?" That one hurt. Because I was working. I was 40 minutes away, working a full-time job and driving out every weekend and most evenings to see Mom. I changed her sheets. I drove her to 2 appointments that Leah couldn't make. I stayed overnight 3 times when her pain was bad, and she didn't want to be alone. I'm not claiming I did as much as Leah. I didn't. But where were you implies I was absent. I wasn't absent. I was present as often as my life allowed. There's a difference between doing less and doing nothing. And Leah erased that difference with 5 words. That one hurt. Bad. Because she wasn't entirely wrong. She was there more than me. That's a fact. But being there more doesn't give you the right to rewrite someone's will while they're dying. Caregiving is not a blank check for inheritance. If she felt she deserved more because she did more, there are conversations that could have been had. While Mom was alive. While Mom was lucid. While Mom could have voluntarily, with full understanding, decided to adjust the split. That would have been sad for me, but it would have been legitimate. Instead, Leah waited until Mom couldn't think clearly and had someone else write a new will. That's not asking for more. That's taking more. There's a world of difference. Leah hired her own attorney, a guy who, from what I gather, specialized in defending estate disputes. Her legal argument was that Mom had lucid intervals and was capable of making decisions even if her overall cognitive state was declining. The lucid interval defense is real. It's a legitimate legal concept, but it requires evidence that the person was actually lucid at the time of signing. Medical records from the week of January 15th showed no such evidence. In fact, the notes from Mom's visiting nurse on January 14th, one day before the signing, said, "Patient appears disoriented today. Could not recall what she had for breakfast." Daughter present and managing medications. Daughter present and managing medications. One day before a new will was signed that gave that same daughter everything. The legal process took about 5 months. During that time, Leah and I didn't speak except through attorneys. The family was split. Some relatives sided with her. She took care of Helen, she deserves more. Others sided with me. A will is a will, and you don't change it when someone has dementia. Thanksgiving was canceled. Christmas was separate. My cousin Nate, Leah's side of the family, Aunt Linda's kid, sent me a message saying, "Connor, I know this is complicated, but Leah was there for your mom every single day. Maybe she earned a bigger share." I said, "Nate, she was there every day because she chose to be, and I'm grateful for that. But she used that access to change our mother's will while mom had dementia. If you think that's earning a bigger share, we have different definitions of earning." He didn't respond. My aunt, mom's sister Carol, called me once and said, "Connor, your mother would be heartbroken." I said, "My mother wrote a will that was fair. Someone else changed it. That's what would break her heart." Catherine subpoenaed the medical records, the attorney's client file, and Leah's financial records from the period in question. What came back was damning. David Klein, the attorney who drafted the new will, admitted in a deposition that he'd met with my mother only once for approximately 20 minutes, and that Leah had been present during the entire meeting. He said my mother had been quiet and appeared to defer to her daughter on several points. When asked if he'd independently assessed her capacity, he said, "I relied on her daughter's assurance that she was of sound mind." He relied on Leah's word. The person who benefited from the will change was also the person vouching for the señor's mental state. That's not just a conflict of interest, that's the whole case. Catherine presented the evidence to the probate judge in September. The judge reviewed the medical records, the deposition transcript, the comparison between the two wills, and the oncologist's note recommending that major decisions be deferred. The ruling came in October. The January will was invalidated. The 2019 will, the original, equal split, was reinstated. The estate would be divided 50-50, as Mom originally intended. The house would be sold and the proceeds split. The liquid assets would be divided equally. The car, the jewelry, everything, split. The judge also referred the case to Adult Protective Services for review of potential elder abuse. Leah hasn't been charged with anything as of this writing. I don't know if she will be. I don't know if I want her to be. She's my sister. She's the person I grew up with, fought with, shared a bathroom with for 16 years. She's also the person who took advantage of our dying mother. Both of those things are true at the same time, and I don't know how to hold them both. The judge invalidated the will. The original 50-50 split is back, and the case has been referred to Adult Protective Services. The executor's plan: find a new attorney, get the new will signed while Mom can barely remember her phone number, and collect 80% of everything, just fell apart in a courtroom. She relied on a 20-minute meeting with a lawyer who didn't bother checking if his client knew what she was signing. She relied on no one asking questions. She relied on Connor being too trusting, too busy, or too grief-stricken to notice. She forgot one thing. Connor is a financial analyst. His job is literally to find the number that doesn't match. And the number that didn't match was the entire will. Final update. I want to tell you about the moment after the judge ruled. I was sitting in the courtroom with Catherine. Leah was across the aisle with her attorney. The judge read the decision. The January will was invalidated. The 2019 will was reinstated. 50-50. Fair. I looked at Leah. She was staring straight ahead. Not crying. Not angry. Just still. Like someone who'd been running a marathon and suddenly realized the finish line had been moved. Her attorney leaned over and whispered something. She nodded without looking at him. I wanted to say something to her. I wanted to walk across the aisle and say, "Leah, I'm sorry it came to this." But I didn't, because I wasn't sorry. She made a choice, a deliberate, calculated choice to exploit our mother's condition and rewrite her wishes. And the court agreed. I wasn't going to apologize for being right. We left the courthouse through different exits. I haven't seen her in person since. The house is listed for sale. Leah and I agreed on a realtor through our attorneys. We communicate only through legal channels. I haven't heard her voice since the day she called me angry. I don't know what she looks like now. I don't know how she's doing. Part of me cares. Part of me doesn't. Both parts are valid. My share of the estate, once the house sells and everything is settled, will be approximately $140,000. Catherine's fees came to about $18,000, which sounds like a lot, but compared to the $96,000 Leah would have taken from me under the revised will, it's the best investment I've ever made. ROI of about 400% if you want to be cold about it. And in my line of work, 400% ROI is pretty good. Not that I'm keeping score. Okay, I'm keeping score. Old habits, not a fortune. But fair. Which is all I ever wanted. Mom wanted it fair. She wrote it fair. Someone else made it unfair. And now it's fair again. I keep Mom's recipe book on my kitchen counter, not in a drawer. On the counter, open, propped up against the backsplash. The page it's open to right now is her banana bread recipe. Mom made incredible banana bread. Cinnamon, brown sugar, way too many walnuts. The bananas had to be almost black or she wouldn't use them. She said the uglier the banana, the better the bread. I made it last Sunday. Didn't get it right. The middle was a little underdone, but the kitchen smelled like her kitchen. And for about 20 minutes, she was there. My aunt, Mom's sister, Carol, came over for dinner last week. We ate the banana bread, the edges were fine. And she told me stories about Mom when she was young. How she used to argue with their dad about politics at the dinner table. How she once drove 2 hours in a snowstorm to help Carol move out of a bad apartment. How she kept every drawing I ever made in school in a box under her bed. I didn't know about the box. I found it when we were cleaning out the house for the sale. 30 years of drawings. Stick figures and crayon landscapes, and a truly terrible portrait of our dog from when I was 8. She kept all of it. The box is in my closet now, next to a folder with the original will. Both of them mean the same thing. My mom loved me. She loved me equally. She wrote it down. And no revised will, no power of attorney, no 20-minute meeting with a stranger is ever going to change that. David Klein, the attorney who drafted the January will, is under review by the state bar. Catherine filed the complaint. She said, he should have independently assessed capacity. That's not optional. It's his professional obligation. Whether he faces consequences, I don't know. But the complaint is on record, and records matter. I learned that from my mom. She was a teacher for 28 years. She kept records of everything. Grade books, attendance sheets, parent conference notes, everything. Leah. I don't know what to say about Leah that isn't either too generous or too harsh. She was a good caregiver. She showed up when it mattered. She held Mom's hand at the end, but she also exploited Mom's vulnerability to rewrite her legacy. Both things happened. Both are real. I'm not going to pretend one cancels out the other. Caregiving is not a transaction. An inheritance is not a reward for showing up. My coworker Davis, the one who recommended Catherine, invited me to lunch last week. We were eating sandwiches at our desks. Exciting life, I know. And he said, "How are you doing with everything?" I said, "I'm okay, mostly." He said, "You know, when I went through this with my grandmother's estate, the hardest part wasn't the legal stuff. It was looking at my cousin differently, knowing he'd done it on purpose, knowing he'd looked at a sick woman and seen an opportunity." I said, "Yeah, that's exactly it." He said, "It gets easier. It doesn't get okay, but it gets easier." I appreciated that. No motivational quotes, no advice, just the truth from someone who'd been there. I read something once, I think it was in one of Mom's books from the book club, that said, "Grief reveals character the way fire reveals gold." I think that's true. Grief revealed my character. I'm the kind of person who reads the fine print. And grief revealed Leah's character. She's the kind of person who rewrites it. Would you have contested the will? Or would you have accepted what your sister produced and moved on? I've had people tell me both. That I should have kept the peace. That the money isn't worth the family. And I hear that. But peace wasn't broken by me. Peace was broken the moment someone forged my mother's final wishes during the worst period of her life. I didn't start this fight. I just refused to lose it. Oh, one more thing. The jewelry box that was supposed to go to me under the revised will, the one with costume pieces? Turns out there was a ring in there that Leah had missed. My grandmother's engagement ring. It wasn't costume. It was a 1.2 carat diamond from 1952 that my mom had always promised to me. She'd told me this on the phone maybe a year before she got sick, casually, the way moms mention things that are actually very important. When I'm gone, I want you to have your grandmother's ring, for when you find the right person. Leah didn't know about that conversation. She thought it was just an old ring in a box. It's the most valuable thing in the estate, and it's mine. I had it appraised. $12,300. Leah let it go for a box of costume jewelry. I keep it in my nightstand drawer now. When the time is right, it'll go on someone's finger. Someone real. Someone I trust. And when that happens, I'll think about my mom. And my grandmother. And the fact that the most important things, the things that actually matter, can't be rewritten in a 20-minute meeting. Anyway, the banana bread recipe has a note at the bottom in Mom's handwriting that says, "Double the walnuts, Connor never eats enough nuts." She wrote that for me, years ago, on a recipe card, in her own handwriting. No attorney, no witnesses, just a mom and a recipe and a note about walnuts. That's a will too, in its own way. And it's the one I trust most. No attorney drafted it. No power of attorney was involved. Just a mom who loved her son and wanted him to eat more walnuts. That's the inheritance that matters. The rest is just numbers. And I'm good with numbers. But I'm better with walnuts now. Working on it anyway. Mom would be proud. Or she'd say the walnuts were chopped too big. Probably both. Look, I know this one was heavy. It's not the usual villain gets destroyed and everyone cheers story. It's messy. The villain is his sister. The victim is his mother. And the win, if you can call it that, is just fairness. 50-50, the way Mom wrote it. Connor didn't get more than he deserved. He got exactly what he was supposed to get. And he had to fight his own family to get it. That's not revenge. That's just justice, with a probate attorney. If you're dealing with something like this, get the records, read the fine print, and never assume that family won't take advantage of family. Drop a comment. Would you have contested? Subscribe, and I'll see you next time.